Hey everyone, so I'm going to be showing you today how I make our little 2-inch pies that we send out every year for Christmas. I already made them yesterday, but I have leftover pie filling for pumpkin pie and pecan pie that I need to use up today. For fruit pie fillings, I always just get canned filling. So I will show you the recipe for the pie crust, the pumpkin pie recipe, the pecan pie recipe, and then I will also show you how I make decorations for the tops of the pies, and then also how I package those to give away as gifts. All right, for our pie crust, this is generally going to make enough for one 9-inch deep dish crust, or it'll make enough for 12 cupcakes. For the recipe, we'll start with 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. Then we're going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Next, we're going to add in about a tablespoon of sugar. You can add in less, or you can totally omit it, or you can add in a little bit more if you want the crust to be sweeter. Right, now that you have all of the dry ingredients in there, you just want to pulse this together and make sure it's blended before we start adding in the butter and the water. Alright, now that the dry ingredients are blended, I'm just going to go ahead and cube up a stick of butter or a 1/2 cup of butter and chunk that in there. And this is cold butter, by the way. Okay, so now we will just blend this. Okay, so after you've blended the butter into the dry ingredients and it looks a little bit like a cornmeal consistency, then you can add in your water and lemon juice. So we're going to get a 1/4 cup of ice cold water. Okay, so I have that here, and then what I like to do is just squeeze the lemon juice and mix it in with the water, or you can squeeze it straight into the food processor or mix it in by hand. You don't have to have a food processor to make the crust. So while it's running, I like to pour this in so it's evenly incorporated. Once it's combined, it will form a ball and everything will stick to it, but it won't be too sticky. It will feel kind of like Play-Doh. You see? Now you can sit your pie crust in the refrigerator to let it firm up, but I usually don't. So I'm just going to go ahead and toss this onto a floured surface here. One second. Okay, so you're just going to lightly flour your countertop or cutting board. Obviously, you want to make sure it's clean. And then just kind of knead it together a little bit. And then make sure both sides are floured. Now, if you're going to be doing this for a pie dish, a lot of the times it's easier to put it into a bowl and then, squish it and roll it out. But for the purposes of making these into cupcakes, I'm going to go ahead and work this out into more of a square shape. Let me just grab a jar. And you want to get this to where it's about a 1/4 inch thick, really no thicker than that, but you can go a little thinner. But if you go too thin for the cupcakes, then they're going to break up really easily and you're not going to be able to hold them, or the pie filling is just going to come through the bottom. Here's the lid for a wide mouth mason jar, and then do it and twist. Don't scoot it around because then it will roll it up. And you can flour this if it starts to stick. All right, I'm running pretty low on my pie crust here. I'm cutting it close with the recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do the lattice and how I do a braid for decorations, like in the picture. Okay, so first up is the lattice. So you'll just roll it out. Again, a 1/4 inch thick, but you can do it a little bit thinner if you want. But it is a lot more workable if you do it at a good thickness, like a 1/4 inch. And again, these are only 2-inch pies, so when you're making your block, you can kind of account for that. And what I like to do at this point is cover this in an egg wash so that it can be soaking in, because it's a lot easier to go ahead and wash that before you cut your lines so that it doesn't mess any of your lines up and smush them back together. So I'm not doing that because I'm going to actually mix this back in and just make more cups, because I don't need to do the decorations on these. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting my lines. Okay, now that you have your flour rolled out to do the lattice, what you'll want to do is just cut it into strips. So for one 2-inch pie, I generally only need 4 strips, but you can do this however you want. And what I will do Once you have your cup in, you put in your filling, and then you can go ahead and you can either weave these beforehand and cut them out, but what I think is easiest is to just put those things in first and then lay one thing on top of the filling like this. Okay. So you've got your first one, and then you place this under there, and then you lay this one and you pull this back over top. I don't know if that was helpful to anyone. So we're going to go back and do this next one. So you see how this one is laid underneath. For this one, we're going to go over top. And since this one is laid over top above it, then we're going to pull this back up and lay it underneath. So that's how you do the weave for the lattice on top of your pie. And of course, if you're doing a larger pie, then you can do more strips and make a larger weave. But these are super cute for the little 2-inch pies. And again, it's a lot easier if you, before cutting these into your decorations, if you do the egg wash and let that sit and soak in for a minute, because once you get it to this point, it just gets a little tougher to deal with. So again, pretend that this is your muffin cup. Once you have these laid across your muffin cup, you want to go through and crimp the edges to where it is like your circular muffin tin there. Lattice, I'll just show you how I do the braid for the pies. So again, you'll cut into strips. It works better for the braid if you can do it longer. And for the braid, I probably do 1/2-inch strips rather than 1/4 inch, but you can do them again smaller or wider. So I have 3 strips cut for the braid. And we are just going to crimp the very top of all 3 together. Take one strand, go, and again, when you're doing your decorations, it's easier if you roll it out, do your egg wash, and then cut. So from this point, you're just going to do a regular braid. And remember to be gentle. And there you have your braid. So again, it's easier if you do this in a longer one. This will only get you about 1/2 of a muffin tin, which is also a really cute decoration if you don't want to do the full thing around. But these braids, they look like wreaths around the tops of the muffins whenever you're doing these around Christmas time. I think it's really cute. Okay, so now that I've showed you those 2 decorations, other than crimping the sides, those are really the only ones that I have for you. So we will continue on with the process, and I'll show you how to put the bottoms of these into the cups. So in a greased muffin pan, you will want to go ahead and just start placing these in like so. Now as you're putting these in, you may get air bubbles in the bottom. You can just kind of pull it off the side to let that through, or we're going to go back and poke holes with a fork, and that will help out too. Okay, now that we have all of the cups filled with our pie crust, we're going to go back and poke each of them with a fork a couple of times. You want to do this gently, of course. You don't want to scratch your pan if you're using a metal one. Next, we're gonna come back with the filling. Again, my filling's already pre-made because I made this stuff yesterday, and now I'm just kind of doing around with all of the leftover stuff. So I have pecan and pumpkin, so I'll do 6 of each here. Okay, so first I'm going to come through with my pre-made mix, and again, I'll leave the recipe in the description. This is just the Libby Hill recipe. I'm going to come through and put just under a 1/4 cup in each of these. These are going to puff up a little bit when they cook for the pecan and the pumpkin pie. But we can fill them, I'd say probably a little less than a 1/2 inch from the top, and it'll be fine. That is from the top of your crust. You can see I was not very precise with a lot of these. You can go through and crimp the edges of these here. Before I continue with this, I'll show you a really cute way. So you can take just the end of a measuring spoon or something, and then you just go through and do little slants and push it down around the edge. And it gives it a cute scalloped look. And I think it's a little bit easier than having to use your hands. I haven't quite mastered that one. And show it without filling. Oh my gosh, I'll try and show it without spilling my pie filling here. I'll show it again when they come out, but I'm going to continue on. I won't worry about the ones I've done, I don't think, because that will probably end up getting pie filling all over my measuring cup here. I think that doing them this way is just really rustic looking. And from this point, if you have decorations, I just ran out of my pie dough here, but if you have decorations to go on top, you'll just lay them on top here and then press them down along the edge. Or if you're doing a braid and you're going to form that in a circle, you just sit that on top. You don't have to press that down any. That one's short, so I'll leave it. But this does work a lot easier if the dough is about a 1/4 inch thick and it goes all the way up to the top, if you're going to do something with the scalloping or press the edges. And that one's a little bit on the thin side, so I'm also going to skip it. So these are things to keep in mind if you're going to be giving these away for gifts. I'm just making these for me because we've already been through that. But whenever you're doing the edges of these, you can go back with an egg wash. However, I don't really think it's necessary, especially because with the pumpkin and a pecan, we're typically going to bake these for, I'd say, probably about 5 minutes longer. Whereas with the berries, you'll want to bake those between 20 and 25 minutes. With pecan and the pumpkin or custard pies, you'll want to bake that for a few more minutes just to make sure the egg is cooked through. Okay, so now that I have crimped all of the edges that I want to here, I'm going to continue filling in with my pie. I really should have filmed it when I did the original boxes. I just did not have time, because when I'm doing those trays and I'm putting like a lot of effort into it, I would really say give yourself like 45 minutes to an hour for each tray, especially if you're going to be doing for lattice or braids for each individual one. So I'm going to do just 6 of the pumpkin. Now I'm going to go and fill these with the pecan. Okay, so this is just the custard filling for the pecan pie. Just mixing this in a little bit. But really, this is just eggs, corn syrup, and sugar and vanilla, I do believe. This is the pecan pie recipe that is on the Karo syrup bottle, so I will also put that in the description. Both of these, I've tested quite a few of the recipes, and they both wound up being the better of the recipes that I've tried, so I just stick with these. Okay, so for the pecan filling, what we're going to come through and do now is just put crushed up pecans in each of the cups. You don't have to crush the pecans if you don't want to. That's just a preference for me. Okay, now that I have my pecans crushed up, I'm going to go through and put probably about 2 tablespoons in each cup. I guess another way is to say, really, you just want to cover the bottom of it, because whenever you do your custard filling in here, these are going to rise up to the top of it. So you want to leave just a little bit of it to make sure it has room to do that. And just make sure you're kind of spread evenly. And again, it's probably about 2 or 3 tablespoons of the custard filling. I would apply the same rule here, fill it about 1/4 inch from the top, or a little less than 1/2 inch, because these will rise. And if the custard filling goes over the top, if the filling goes over the edges, a lot of the times it will burn on there because there's a lot of sugar, especially in the pecan pie. Okay. You can see that the pecans are starting to rise to the top. They're slowly floating up here. Now that we have these all ready to go, I'm just going to pop this in my oven preheated at 350 degrees. For these, I'll do about 25 to 30 minutes. I will really just watch it and make sure that the filling does not buzz, so I'll wait and see until it starts to puff up, until some of them start to maybe crack a little bit in the center, and then we'll watch the edges of the crust to make sure that they don't burn, which I don't ever have a problem with that. But typically they'll get a little bit browning, and if the filling goes over, there may be a little bit of burning just on the edges, but usually it's nothing that you're not going to see with any homemade pie. So I'm going to pop these in the oven for a few minutes, and then I will pop them back out when they're ready to go and show you what to do next. Okay, our little mini pies are done, so now I'm just going to let these completely cool, and then I will show you how to box them up. Okay, so I ended up pulling out the pecan pies just a few minutes before the pumpkin pies. The pecan went for about 25 and the pumpkin for about 30. In the original Libby Hill recipe, you're supposed to bake it at about 425 for about 15 minutes and then reduce the heat down to 350 for the remainder of the time. So when I baked the pumpkin originally, I just did 425 for about 10 minutes and then reduced the temperature for the last 10 to 15 on the muffin size. So if that helps, there you go. So I'm going to try to go ahead and pull these out. Okay, so here's our pies. I'm going to let these completely cool and then I will show you how to put them in their boxes. Alright, so now that the pies are completely cooled, you can take, these are just muffin liners. Because this is a white tin, and I believe that this is about 5 inches square. I'll post the exact measurements in the description as well. But because this is not see-through, I like to turn the muffin papers right side up. Okay, so you see that they're in there, something like that. Okay, so you just take and place your pies in here. You can do whatever assortment that you want. And the ones that we gave out, I did 4 different ones. But this is just for video purposes. It's super cute. And then you just place the lid on if you have this kind. And then because these lids are super flimsy, I like to add ribbon to keep it secure. And then also because it's cute, just take two or 3 feet of ribbon here. Then tie a bow. Okay, everyone, well, thank you so much for watching. I know that this isn't the normal plant-related video, but I hope that this was helpful to you, and I will probably upload recipe videos every so often just because I love to cook and I have so many recipes to share. Well, thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye.